certain companies, like a lot of the ones with like big portfolios, they're all about trying to make noise. I'd rather make music.
I spent my life in the world of marketing. I can tell you that most people build brands by turning up the volume. My guest today built one by turning it down.
Like Nutrl Vodka. Could it be about nothingness?
Paul Meehan is the founder of Nutrl Vodka Soda, a product that showed up in a sea of loud packaging and sweet shortcuts and marketing that begged for attention. But he did the opposite. Clean, simple, almost stubbornly restrained. And what makes Paul fascinating, at least to me, is that he didn't come at disruption like a typical disruptor. He lived inside the system first. Senior roles in big beverage companies where you learn how hard it is to change anything once a brand gets successful. Then he walked away from the safety of that world and built something different, not just a company, but a creative culture.
Find the joy in getting better. Find the joy in getting more flexible. Find the joy in listening, learning. Like that's where the great stuff comes from.
The kind of place where the office feels like home, where taste matters, where momentum matters, where the smallest details can spark the biggest conversations.
Crucially important. You can create environments, you can get great people, but the magic is called magic for a reason. You don't know.
And here's the part that really matters in this show. Paul's journey is a lesson in courage. Courage to simplify when everyone else is complicating. The courage to trust your instincts when the world asks for proof. And he had the courage to create something he loved, this baby, this beautiful thing that was happening all over the world. But he also made the decision to let go.
I've had the door slammed to me like countless times. And the only reason I am lucky now is I didn't stop knocking on the doors.
Why? I think to figure out who he really is on the other side. And on that other side that I'm seeing so far is this love of music and humanity and really understanding how he can give back. So today we're going to talk about what shaped Paul, what tested him, what he learned, and what he's going to do next.
If we espouse more values of kind of openness and kindness and generosity of time, we have a better economy if people felt they could try more things. And you were allowed to kind of not just actively fail to learn or learn to fail, like just grow and try.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
Paul Meehan, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Tony, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Let's take it back to your earliest years. I was doing some research and this concept sort of taste, it really roared through your house, didn't it? Where it was art and culture and this whole fusion of humanity kind of happening.
Growing up in Toronto at the time that, we grew up and seeing the country grow and, become more diverse and more interesting and more dynamic. And obviously I was not super aware of all the ups and downs on the macro level, but I got to be exposed to lots of things, music, art, culture. And people have asked me before, like, what's it like to be Canadian? I said, well, people think it's all cold and nothing to do. But because there are fewer things to do, we could take more interest in music and art and culture and different cultures and restaurants. And yeah, that's kind of, I would give most of the credit for that output of the agency, certainly that environment that you saw. And I was thrilled. I was always thrilled to have people come see the space because, yeah, we had video games and ping pong tables, but it wasn't about a casual thing. It was more about a comfortable space. And the way you describe it is great. But we, as you know, we worked hard, but we were trying to create environments that allowed you to, for great things to come up, different opinions to come through as loud as they wanted. And for lack of a better word, really cool, organic environment.
There's a lot of people that have agencies that put in the pool tables or, look how interesting we are in the video games. I think the difference with your shop, when I walked many halls, is the eyes were shining. There was a lot of laughter. There's a lot of people just talking and this sort of kinetic energy. I guess that happens from the top. But one of the things I found, it's hard to keep that fire burning because you change and people want to be promoted and structure and hierarchy. And I remember knowing everybody's first name. I knew their partner's name, their kids' names. And then near the end, you had to really almost be briefed on who that new person was in the design shop. Did you find that at all, or did you manage a way to always keep those embers burning? We're creating something special here, and it's all we versus you and me.
I've said before, and this sounds callous, but the greatest source of joy in life are people, and the greatest liability and source of stress are people. And it does come down to, I mean, I've heard a number of your excellent podcast guests talking about get great people. It is crucially important. You can create environments, you can get great people, but the magic is called magic for a reason. You don't know. It can erode those things. I remember when we were expanding, because we expanded from Vancouver to London and Toronto, and we were looking at Toronto. You may remember we wanted to work with you. We were like, hey, that's a cool environment. Those are cool people. It's a cool space. And you were very clear and honest to me in terms of, scale and scope, and we won't go down that road there. But, you asked me a very similar question a long time ago. If you want to hang on to it, it's not the pool tables and the beers after that. It's definitely about real interest in the work you do. And it sounds, again, cliche, but, because not every client was a dream client. Not every brand you worked on made you jump out of bed. You had to approach every task and every day like you owned it and you cared about it. The people who didn't do that, once it becomes a job, or once it became a job for anyone, certainly me and Ideas, we're like, you could tell.
Why is it that some clients have this level of graciousness and appreciation, truly see you as a partner, not as a word that leaps out of a business book, but saying we're in this together. Let's build it together. If we make mistakes, we do it together. If we win, we do it together. While others don't have that same attitude. I was always surprised, because if I'm going to invest money with people to help me get to where I want to go, the more I do it with gratitude and empathy and honesty, the better work I'll get.
I'll tell you a quick story. A client of mine, the biggest and most important client I've ever had in my life, recently turned 70. He's been retired for a while now. And I got this envelope and this beautiful letter, and he's quoting Wicked. He sends out a number of letters to people on every age he turns. So it's 50, he sends out 50. And I made it into the 70, which is great. And he says, you've changed my life for good. Really kind, really important. And this guy who hired us a long, long time ago, when we had no business being hired by an account this size, he's really honest and straightforward, a gargantuan pain in the ass at times. But you know what? You knew that we were doing things together, changed a lot of lives for good. Offices were built because of that business we had. But when we started, we only had 8 people, and he trusted us and he cared about us, and you could really tell. And even before this letter showed up, I always thought of him as a good reference point for all the good and bad in terms of, the challenges. And I worked my ass off for him. His office was in London. I was in Vancouver. I was up at 3 a.m. when my kids were babies, and I jumped out of bed because I wanted him to win and he wanted me to win. And it's empathy, and it's interest, and it's concern. We had a good relationship, and the good relationship doesn't mean you're kissing anyone's ass. You're just kind of dealing with it directly. And that's what I enjoyed the most. And the ones I didn't enjoy were the indirect and the power brokers. And, it wasn't just the fact that he was one of the most mature clients we had, but that didn't hurt. He'd seen his share of politicians, charlatans, and all those things. And I think he just wanted to set the bar high. I would wish that on anyone, to work with anyone, even a 10th as kind of inspiring and engaging as that. But to do that, you're going to have to kiss some frogs.
You had a great career going in the world, Diageo, Mark Anthony, Sleeman. I mean, you're a rocket ship. You're building a great reputation. What made you turn your back on the security that comes with big business? It's not guaranteed, but there's an element of security, and create your agency, Me and Lewis?
I'll tell you, the first year of the agency, we billed $12,000. So it was a bit of a interesting experience, having kind of climbed and worked my way up, and bought personal real estate and built some safety. But the impetus was, I definitely realized what I like to do. And then through conversations with people, I realized what I was best at. I figured out that the product that I sell was brand strategy. And I'd actually never heard the term creative strategist before. I'm not saying I invented it, but certainly I didn't lift it. I used it because that's what I did. I looked at it and it's like, well, I look at everything, right? And ask a lot of questions and come around it. And I realized that even internal and external, there's no one doing that job. I'll give credit to a former boss and current friend of mine who said, that's what you're best at.
Curiosity, this appetite for ideas. You're building a great agency. You're doing incredibly well. Once again, I'm making this a sudden pivot, and it wasn't a sudden pivot, but you create your own brand. I have to believe that with every creative person, strategic person in the industry has dreamed of doing what you did. And I can't think of another that's done it, let alone that's done it as well as you. Because I want to spend a lot of our time talking about having the hand on the rudder. But that's another big change. I'm working for big business. I'm working for myself, and now I'm going to create my own brand.
I was always asked, when are you going to do your thing? And a very good friend of mine is the head of Steam Whistle Brewing. I went in for an interview and he didn't hire me, but we've stayed friends since. And he said to me, yeah, you're going to do something. Keep in touch. And we've kept in touch for 30 years. And as we chat about things, and as cheesy as it sounds, I had so many obligations on the brand side. You know, we had the Miller business globally, our tiny little agency from Vancouver. I felt like, you know, that's a pretty important, cool thing. And then one day I get a text or phone call, I forgot, that says that SAB Miller, my biggest client, they said, well, ABI, Anheuser-Busch, has offered $100 billion to buy them. And like, I didn't plan for that. And I said, oh, there's no way. That's not happening. They're not going to do that. And a couple months later, they buy it for $109 billion. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, well, the bulk of my business is now. So the honest truth is that I was pushed into a bit of a corner. And I came back from this meeting in London, and I won't name names, but it was not a great meeting. I wasn't inspired. I said, well, you know, you're about to get on a plane from London to Vancouver. It's about 9 hours. By the time you get off this plane, I want an idea for a brand, to myself. So I'm talking to myself. Because, you know, I have all the people and I have all the offices and you know, I've got a young family at home. But on the flight, I was like, I went through every single note in my head, and I was just like literally scribbling and scrabbling around. And the reason why I hadn't done anything before is like a lot of the brands I love and respect are great. And I hadn't thought of anything that had been that remarkably needed, that latent. Like there was nothing that the world said, you know, yeah, you're right. And funny enough, the thing that cracked in my mind was there's a guy who created an excellent creator of brands named Stephen Grass. I've never met him, but he created Hendrix. Incredible story, universally cool. Our client in Miller was speaking about, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And I said, well, why hasn't he done vodka? And someone said, well, vodka's nothing. What do you mean it's nothing? Well, there's nothing to it. It's ethanol. Well, vodka is like the most popular spirit and the one that's been around. So on that flight, I'm like, I really dug into what vodka was. And I used the inspiration that from the Hendrix story that he created about it being interesting. Like that brand, if you look at Hendrix, you're like, you know, that represents uniqueness and personality. So with vodka, I'm like, well, what's available? And neutrality popped in my mind because vodka is literally called grain neutral spirit or neutral grain spirit. I'm like, Nutrl Vodka. Could it be about nothingness? And I wrote this thing on a napkin, literally on a napkin, says completelytasteless.com, right? Which, by the way, unsurprisingly, was available. I think it still points to Nutrl Vodka. And that's where it started.
And, you know, sometimes it's a great lesson in life, too, that, you know, as you said, it was probably an ember burning inside you to do your own thing, but it took somebody else's circumstances that absolutely landed on your lap to do it. When you look at finding that lane that was open to you, were you surprised? Simplicity, design, clarity, because it seemed like it was an open field for you. Everybody else was out shouting from the rooftops, being as absurd as they could. And you went down this less is more. Did it surprise you as you kept digging into that territory, that it was fresh territory versus well-trodden?
What I was surprised about was the amount of attractive options, the optionality with simplicity, with simple, straightforward, right at it. As long as the product is what it is, it says it is. I don't know if you remember, but the original bottle was shaped like an N. So we like literally went pretty big on certain things, but all the messaging was like really engaging. Because it was right around the time when the United States changed presidents, and there was all this kind of political stuff, and everyone's going hard left, hard right. And I said, okay, can't we all just get along type thing, being the Canadian that I am. I created this idea, said, well, the brand's called Nutrl. And so I said, well, you can have any opinion you want. Your vodka should be neutral, right? And that actually was a real spark for us because, you know, you see people on either ends of the spectrum like hating us for even saying it. And this larger group in the middle, which, like it or not, the bulk of us want to get along and love our families and be healthy and, you know, do good stuff. It was surprising and cool. Some brands are so rigid, you can't really get out of the playground too much. I own this one. So I was like, all right. And that was joyous.
Why isn't this a book and a case study at Harvard?
One of the coolest things about this for me and for Melissa, and it's a really cool story because, I mean, Melissa and I, we created the vodka soda basically in Whistler one weekend because I was 30 pounds heavier. I'm not anymore. She had 3 kids and she's like, we need to get healthy. We need to take sugar out of the diet. And we created the vodka. So it kind of came together in all these kind of great ways. It's a private company. Like Melissa and I, we didn't have any investors, didn't have any partners, didn't have any banks. And people find that really interesting. Now, by the way, shout out to RBC because they're my bank now and they're awesome. So they're like, what do you want to do next? So the banks are, I'm not anti-bank, but at that time I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And we spent close to $20 million roll through on everything as we built this thing up to the sizable company it is. And when people started knocking on our doors, like nobody knew that we owned the company, right? So nobody knew that there were no shareholders. We literally had a private equity company come into our office on Oak Street, which is a beautiful space, right? And with a folded piece of paper and said, you take that to your shareholders. I'm like, you didn't even do the diligence to ask, right? So for me, I guess privacy kind of became really one of the most, and this is the first thing, if you Google me, there's nothing, this is the first interview I've done.
You're amazing how hard you're the most successful, difficult person I've ever researched.
Well, that's good. And the reason why I wanted to do this, beyond the fact I'm a huge fan of the show, and I said to you off the top, like, I think that right now, especially, and not just Canada, I mean, primarily Canada, the world, we need to kind of work together and be positive and create momentum. And I'm a real fan and student of momentum. Why it's not is because I was busy creating momentum on other things. For me, it's being a good dad and being healthy and being a good friend. And if it's studied, I hope it's studied for really good active listening, and then being able to determine whether or not a lot of things that the companies don't do is because of X, whatever that X is. But my X was big companies in that space didn't have the courage to do way less and restrain and pull back. They were all, it was the freighter versus the speedboat.
When we come back, Paul and I talk about the decision he made with his wife to sell this extraordinary brand that they created together and where this momentum will take them next. Small business owners, they're the heartbeat of Canada. There are warriors who open early, close late, stretch dollars, slay dragons. They hire our kids, sponsor our teams, turn their ideas into invoices, and their courage and commitment into jobs. They bring life to our streets and energy to our communities, innovation to our economy, and possibilities to our future. When small business beats strong, Canada beats strong. That's why RBC is standing with Canada's dreamers and doers at every stage of the journey. For those ready to start, there's RBC Owner, helping entrepreneurs register and launch. For those ready to grow, RBC brings capital, advice, and support. And for the underrepresented, women, Black, Indigenous, young and emerging business leaders, RBC has programs designed to create more room, runway, and opportunity. Here's the reality. Small business ambition needs more than applause. It needs a partner. And ideas need more than inspiration. They need a place to happen here. And speaking of here, RBC is going even further with plans to deploy up to $1 billion over the coming years to help more homegrown businesses scale, grow, and thrive. Small business is more than business. It's confidence, it's community, it's courage. It's our collective future being built every day and in every way. Small business means the world to you, to me, to all the dreamers and doers, and to RBC. To learn more, visit rbc.com/business. Today I'm talking with Paul Meehan. He's a good friend. He's someone I admire as a human being, as an entrepreneur, someone deeply vested in Canada and our future. You know, you talk about the word momentum, being a fan of the word momentum. You call brand health as the byproduct of constant momentum. You just have to keep pushing, finding your way through it. You can't rest on your laurels, is how I grabbed that quote. Is that what you meant?
I'm kind of, well, in my office, I'm known for, I don't know if everyone can see the air quotes here, for saying that quote. Another one, results are byproducts. Like, you don't go after results. They happen from doing good things. And the other one, in terms of constant momentum, brand health, if you think of any brand, now fundamentally, if a brand is like supposed to be cheap and supposed to be disposable and supposed to be readily accessible, all those things, then keep doing that. It's like meeting someone, you meet them again. It's familiarity, it's relevance. Young marketers and old marketers, and certainly egotistical, arrogant marketers, kind of find joy, selfish joy in the periphery, right? Like the top of mind or the PR. Like there's certain companies, like a lot of the ones with like big portfolios, they're all about trying to make noise. I'd rather make music. Momentum for me is the thing where like, oh wow, it's kind of like you're working on it. You're practicing. You're getting known for that thing. If you look at, again, probably not a bad example to mention, like large portfolio companies, they're constantly distracted. Primarily, you should not measure it by the effectiveness you see down the road, but moreover, like what you believe it's going to create in terms of momentum.
You've talked about Melissa and yourself, and this was your big bet. How did that impact your relationships? Who had influence? Who had authority? Who was there to hold the other up? Was there ever times both of you looked at each other going, what are we doing?
We're partners and we have 3 beautiful kids, and like any relationship, I don't think she'd mind me saying that there were tough times for sure. And funny enough, Tony, tough times after success or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not easy to be grinding. It's not easy to be seen to be winning. But Melissa, she's tough, but she's also sensitive. And so when we felt certain ways, we'd express, I'm a lot. I know that. She's also a lot. But yeah, there was picking up and supporting. I think on the financial side, it was ton of trust. We look back at it now and go, oh my God, that's crazy we didn't get investors. That's crazy we didn't, think about this because, look at the size of that business. But we were just rolling it through. As we are getting older, and our kids are getting older now, we look back at it with an immense sense of pride and shared experience. A very good friend of mine, Dave, was the first guy to ever sell Nutrl at the Regal Beagle in Vancouver once. And I remember one night we show up and Melissa, he's like, what's with you two? You guys just need to sit here. I'm not going to say with you. Have a drink. So there might have been times when we were like intense because, you've got millions of cases on order and you've got, I guess what I'm saying is the people around me, the friends, the family saw us through the ups and downs. And that's actually part of the reason why we ended up selling the business, because we realized, the next level of success would require more of that and more pressure. And our relationship and our kids' relationship took front seat, and we feel great about that decision.
A lot of people look at an entrepreneur's life like they look at a rock star. They don't realize it took me 20 years to get success. What made you say yes to selling the business?
We had a really wild experience on the M&A side, and I'll give credit to a guy named Arjan, who I don't know if you've met Arjan, maybe you have, but just a genius. He runs our family office. He was getting these phone calls and he was like, okay, we're busy basically because our business, we're the number 1 SKU at the LCBO, number 1 SKU at the BC. We're doing great. We had mapped out a plan to launch in the United States. We had distributors. We had everything set and ready to go. As the phone calls started coming in about, we'd like to meet with you on the M&A side, it hadn't even crossed our mind. I'd never been courted like that. I'd never I'm the underdog, right, Tony? I became high level brand guy because I'd been the best rep. I wasn't the guy with the Harvard MBA, right? So I was still grinding and fighting and growing and yes, winning. So we were all prepared to do a United States and a UK launch. And as the kind of offers came in, the conversations were coming in, we were serious black ink, right? We were generating lots of EBITDA. We were no reason to sell. I remember, funny enough, when we ended up showing our finances to the company we ended up selling to, it's funny, their bargaining position was a little different. Like, oh, you'd think they'd see a bunch of, fluff before. And now you've got, wow, you're profitable. Profitable business that size and that speed, that's not normal. We're sitting there at that time, we're like, okay, and you lay all the variables out and I talk about momentum. It's going to take momentum. For us to do that, probably would have stayed a little heavier than I should be. And I would have been on more planes than I needed to be. My kids wouldn't have got to see me. But when we decided to work together, we gave ourselves a long enough window that we could then participate and act, as leaders with that business and make sure our baby had made its way through, not just university, but the first job. And now you look at that brand, one of the top spirit brands in the United States, doing very well and ready to take on the world. So I think we made the right decision. There are times I look back at it and say, would have been great just to keep it. Yeah, but I don't really look backwards tons. I look at it reflectively and I feel grateful that we chose the right people to partner with.
So what's next for you? I mean, that music that was always in you, you're bringing it out. Is the itch to create something again? Are you the rock star? I've had the hit song. I don't want to just be a one-hit wonder. I want to put another one out. Or are you satisfied with the marketing world and you're going to explore other things?
I'm not obsessed with winning, but I like building. There are a number of things we're looking at right now in different spaces and also obviously CPG. I've been approached to be, funny enough, I shouldn't be surprised, but some senior level positions. I won't be taking a job any time soon. But if I could be that eminent squeeze, I guess, and investor, but with people who want to listen, great. I think I could offer a lot of good value to people who, and funny enough, like I mentioned, and I'm glad this is a major theme, like my success was not overnight. My mother told me when I was 35 years old or 40 years old, you're way too old to be a wunderkind, right? Like I think that you have to listen and learn. If I can be part of brands and companies like that, great. Like there's so many cool things out there, but also there's only so much of me, and I don't want to slip back into the, full-time job thing if I can avoid it. On the music side, we have a neat little company that's supporting some up-and-coming artists and probably produce some. We have quite a neat little system set up now with the best band that I've ever seen based out of Vancouver and production people. So we're probably going to, I guess, sign some artists and see if we can't help out in that area, do our best to help music therapy programs in Canada. And I want to wake up and make sure every day is fun. On the drink side, you know what, Tony, there is a part of me that I do have another idea that's pretty cool. And Melissa and I wonder if that would be something to do as well. So it's not impossible. How about that?
My 3 takeaways. Before I do, I'm surprised. I don't know what surprised me the most about the interview, other than I'd hate to say it, but if I'd had the success you had with Nutrl and me and Lewis, I'd be singing it from the top of rooftops. And I really admire the fact that and I think Melissa probably has a lot to do with that. I mean, you guys prefer less is more in your brand, and I think you prefer less is more in terms of your persona. So maybe that's my first lesson, is that less is more is wonderful. And the other thing I love about it is this underdog mentality and winning and momentum. And wherever you are in life, whether you're trying to get that first rung on the ladder, you're on a career ladder, you're an entrepreneur, you're looking to make a major career change, it is about momentum. That every day, it's about putting your shoulder in every day. And that's tough sometimes. And it's tough when the headwinds are battling you to the point where you just don't want to get up. But I think momentum is a wonderful thing. But the most interesting thing is where your culture came from, that embodied in terms of the culture of your agency and the culture you created with Nutrl, and that sense of the benefit of growing up in a multicultural. But instead of ignoring it, listening to it, learning from it, absorbing it, embracing it, feeling your soul with it, and how far that's taking you in terms of your appreciation for humanity. Maybe that's what it comes down to. You have a great appreciation for humanity versus spending a lot of time talking about what you did as a human being. And I admire that.
I can tell you that if there's anyone listening who's, feels like, they're not the greatest student, which I wasn't, isn't the best athlete, which I wasn't. I went to the best hockey school in the country. I was in the band. Not the greatest player, anything, I could tell you, like, find the joy in getting better. Find the joy in getting more flexible. Find the joy in listening, learning. Like, that's where the great stuff comes from. I remember I posted once something and said, don't ever call a successful person lucky. I was kind of tired of hearing that, but also, moreover, I didn't want people to think that's how it is, right? I want my kids to realize that, like, they're going to grow up with more money than I had, and maybe ideally fewer fears. But you know what? Do things, get out, walk, meet, smile, grow. I've offered my voice and my support and whatever skills I have to help, right now in Canada for businesses to get going and trying and meeting. And I feel like saying every single time, like, I've had the door slammed to me like countless times. And the only reason I am lucky now is I didn't stop knocking on the doors. I didn't stop asking. I didn't stop listening. And all those things, you see all the things I'm saying, there's no magic there, right? There's no magic at all. It's just really good appreciation for the environment. And I'm glad you wrapped it up in terms of where I'm from, because, we're from this great place with so much potential. Things like bureaucracy and politics and posturing and all the kind of big stuff gets in the way. And I think that if we espouse more values of kind of openness and kindness and generosity of time, we have a better economy if people felt they could try more things. And you were allowed to kind of not just actively fail to learn or learn to fail, like, just grow and try. It's not about the zeros in your bank account. It's about, the smiles and the contacts and the people and the health and the happiness and all your friends. And, as we get older and we see people getting older and losing people and people being sick, you know what? It's cliche, but it's true. You can always make more money. You can't make more time. So I want people to realize that the time they spend on things, as long as they're creating momentum, they're doing great things, you can live a life of purpose and you can add value to the world. And that's not a bad thing to say.
Amen, brother. Every once in a while in Chatter That Matters, I introduce you to someone who works at RBC and someone that leads with their heart. Today we're going to chat with Kim Mason. She's the Executive Vice President, Head of Private Banking for RBC. If there's two words to describe Kim, it would be positivity and possibility. Kim, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Thank you.
I love doing some research on you. You went to university to be a journalist, studied one of my favorite subjects, anthropology. The dream of Kim Mason at a young age was traveling the world and writing about it. I'd love to know how that one summer at RBC seemed to change that trajectory. And 4 decades later, you have one of the most important positions at the bank.
It was actually my dad that recommended one summer I go and get a job at RBC, which was our family bank. It just changed the course of everything for me, quite honestly. And but I came in at the right time. I came into the bank before automated banking machines, ABMs. They didn't exist. I remember when the first ATMs were installed at the branch that I was working at. When I joined RBC, there was no such thing as online banking, let alone mobile banking, chat, asynchronous chat, all these tools. And so, I think I came in at the right time, and I'm a little bit of an addict to progress, just constantly evolving and finding better ways of doing things. And thankfully, I've been a part of that ride for almost 40 years now. That and culture.
What was the mood like in the bank when the automated teller machines came in and people must have thought, oh, there goes my job?
There's angst in that across every industry, right, Tony? And that comes with progress. And fear is a natural outcome of that. But I think as long as leaders are always communicating and you're always focusing on the fact that growth has always accompanied, in my view anyway, growth accompanies progress. Innovation brings growth.
I don't want the listeners to think of this as a love-in, but I want to endorse what you said about your culture. I spent 5 years now in every corner of RBC because of the podcast, Chatter That Matters. And what strikes me is that more often than not, the people that are leading lead with their heart. RBC's found this weird balance between chasing a higher purpose, but at the same time, still delivering the bottom line.
Honestly, Tony, it's care. It's genuine. It is a genuine sense of caring for one another and caring for our clients, caring for our collective success. It is important to have a balance there. And the organization only wins when we take care of our clients. And we can only take care of our clients if we're taking care of our employees, because quite frankly, what we demonstrate to them then is how they take care of our clients. And, I hear a lot of people talk about demonstrating empathy. To me, it's not about demonstrating empathy. It's about being empathetic. It's real or it's not.
You've worked in risk management, contact centers, commercial banking, regional president of Atlantic Canada, Greater Toronto. Now you head up all of private banking. What mindset do you need to realize that sometimes the tomorrow you don't understand could be the most exciting part of your career?
Curiosity. Are you curious to learn more? Do you have a desire to actually find out what's on the other side of something? I used to have a desire, even long before I joined banking. I wanted to know what was happening on the other side of the counter of all those wickets. It seemed like it was this magic place where things were happening. A close follow to that is trust. You have to have trust that the organization will support you as you go through that learning journey. And then the last one would be a similar vein to trust. It's confidence in yourself. You have to have confidence at the core that you've actually got the capability to do it, to learn and to be successful.
Financial literacy is something that we've all approached in so many different ways. And I know that you've done some great work with McGill. I know you've done a lot of work with My Money Matters. How do we elevate that within families, both the high net worth families you serve today and families from across Canada you've served your entire career, so that they realize that money doesn't buy happiness, but the right choices you make with your money can help fuel your dreams. It can help you make your destiny a matter of choice, not chance.
In this role, in this business, which I've now been leading for 6 years, it's very clear to me that it's becoming more and more persistent on the radar for our high net worth families. And in particular, for parents that want to make sure that their children are getting exposed to financial literacy. And it's funny because when I was in the mass retail side of the bank, when I was a regional president, we always looked to our branch managers to conduct advice events. And those advice events would be on things like first-time home buying, investing early in an RSP. They were advice events that we would communicate in the branch. Clients would come and it would be on a number of topics. In the high net worth space and in the ultra high net worth space, it's very different and it's very personal. The requests for financial literacy tend to come from clients asking our private bankers and our financial planning specialists to meet with their children, to talk to them about financial literacy, to lead them through some of the life lessons that they're going to need as they continue to either create their own opportunities in wealth or preparing them to take on family wealth in an intergenerational transfer.
It seems so obvious, but so often people try to put it off for a rainy day, or they say, I'm not old enough for it, or I don't even think about my mortality. And I'm wondering, how do we personalize it so people take it personally? Is there something around financial planning that really makes this sort of intangible, ethereal thing something more clear? Because, that is a garden that I really want to plant.
I think ultimately it comes down to your own personal orientation. Some people are just intrinsic planners and they're always thinking ahead and they're very organized that way. And others tend to put off and hope that they don't have to go there. They don't want to have to think about that. The reality is time is short and none of us can predict what's going to happen. And when you have that predictability, oftentimes it's through a life event. Either you've learned through a diagnosis that is changing the way you look to your future, or you've learned something about a parent, or on a positive side, there's been a liquidity event that, has had a very positive influence on your life, or a lottery. We certainly see lots of those, which is always promising. We're here for either of those scenarios. We prefer to be in lockstep with our clients, helping them plan, because that builds confidence with them and that builds trust in their relationship with us. But the reality is not everyone thinks that forward. And so that's part of our job, is just to try and plant that seed.
I adore you. And I wanted you on the show because honestly, Kim, when people talk about you, they talk about you with such love. And here's for the next 40 years at RBC.
Thank you.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.